Oh, thanks everybody. I'm going to be talking today, obviously about universal design, but I think more importantly, it's really about why organizations are really implementing universal design in their built environments. It was kind of interesting. Yesterday, I attended an all-day seminar on the IBC, and I got a chance to ask some questions of the presenter. And I asked him about, kind of the intersection of universal design and the code. And he said they are clearly the topic of universal design has come up when they look at writing sections of the code, especially as it pertains to the accessibility. And he actually encouraged me to submit some things. So I just wanted this group to know it's really even starting to get into the conversations when you talk about the international building code. Next. Yeah. So, why does this matter? Just to give you some scale, there's 1.3 billion people across the world that live with some form of disability, and some are obvious, and many are not. And that represents about 8 trillion in spending. And then thinking about the working age between 18 and 64, that's 80% of disabilities are acquired between that age group. Um, and then the last item I think is really interesting. There are more clothing lines for dogs than disabled people. The other thing I want to mention is, we always used to use the term special needs. That's an euphemism, which really is kind of gone out of favor this now. And it's more appropriate just to talk about if somebody has a disability versus a special needs. Next. And so again, at one time or another, we're all going to experience, changes in our ability. Next. This number just represents that 20% of the US population has disability. So again, that's 1 in 5 people. Next. And I like to use this little cartoon. The kid in the wheelchair on the left is saying, "Could you please shovel the ramp?" And the janitor at the school is saying, "Well, all these other kids are waiting to use the stairs. So when I get done with the stairs, then I'll do the ramp for you." And he says, "Yeah, but if you just shovel the ramp, we can all get in." So it's kind of a little bit of a change in mindset. Next. So when we really ask the question, what is universal design? And we look at it as really it's a process that enables and empowers a really diverse population. And it's about removing not only the physical barriers, but also the social barriers, and really creating truly inclusive environments. And we've shown over the last 6 or 7 years that outcomes, if you implement universal design, outcomes include improvements in the area of someone's performance, the health and wellness of the individual and the community, safety. A key outcome of universal design is creating a safer environment. And I'll go over some examples of all of this a little later in the presentation. Also allowing everybody to participate. And then we've shown that there are economic measures that there's a return on this investment. In fact, when we designed the Mary Free Bed Y, it was about a $30 million project. The payback was 1.5 years because of the huge membership increase that occurred at that facility. So in short, universal design is really about improving just daily lives of people, making it safer and friendlier. But you really have to have a change in mindset, looking through a set of different lenses. So I'm going to walk you through some of those right now, just again to kind of in your own
Hey
head
Siri, call
frame.
Brian Welsh at mobile.
I don't know what that was, but so it's really a change in mindset. Next. So what do you see on the left in the left-hand picture? Well, this is viewed from somebody sitting in a mobility device or a wheelchair, and this is a typical stand-up table where people congregate at offices. But to somebody in a wheelchair, it's a barrier for participation. And the picture on the right, this individual is walking with a cell phone. We all do it. And there's a column coming up that he or she may not be aware of. And so universal design promotes a lot of visual cues in the environment to alert this person that this column's coming up. Next. The picture on the right. Imagine if you had a visual impairment, or you were in a hurry, or you had a cell phone in your hand, you may miss that first step. And so again, the way universal design would deal with that is we would have some contrasting colors at the top and at the landing so that you could better distinguish where that first riser was occurring. And the picture on the left, they've tried to distinguish the egress path, but the lighting doesn't work very well. You can see all the dark spots and the shadows created. Next. Stairs can be, they should be beautiful, and as designers, we love to create great stairs and granite and chrome and glass. But the picture on the left is from a corporate headquarters from a Fortune 500 company, and you can see they've inserted a sign there. It says, "Avoid a fall, use the handrail." And the reason for this is that 80% of accidents in buildings and your own home happen on stairs. And you can see the picture in the middle. You can see it would be a little bit confusing of where to step off. And you've got veiling reflections of a delivery van outside on the polished granite. And again, the same thing on the right. So again, we think stairs should be very attractive, but universal design really focuses them on also being safe. Next item. So this is the edge of a door. Whether you have a visual impairment or you're a senior citizen, you would not believe how many accidents, how many people run into the edge of doors that are propped open. So if you look at the next photo, just by putting some blue paint on the edge of that door, how it jumps out at you. Next. And here it is from somebody who has good vision. Again, all it really does is help identify that edge of a door and alert somebody that it's there, that something's different. Next. So what do you see with the handsome young man on the left in the mobility device? Well, what I see is he's happy, he's handsome, and he wants to participate just like his able-bodied friends, doing everything they do, going everywhere they do go in a building. But do you realize that because he's in a mobility device, he's 3 times more likely to be bullied by somebody who's able-bodied, a kid who's able-bodied. And, we just can't let that happen. So we have to do everything we can in our buildings to allow this guy to participate like his able-bodied friends. Next. So middle section, the water. What if I was in a wheelchair or somebody of short stature and I wanted a bottle of water? I really couldn't get it. I'd have to ask for it or pick a different selection. So this is another simple thing that universal design focuses on is making sure that everything is within reach range. And so in a cooler like this, you see this in corporations all over the place in their cafeterias, is that we would tell them to take that bottled water and organize it vertically instead of horizontally, all of their product, so that there's water on the top shelf, the middle shelf, and the bottom shelf, just like everything else should be. Next. So in this case, I put these photos in here because you can see these sharp edges. And, in plan view, they look really, really nice. And, whoever provided this furniture or casework, it was really easy to draw and to put it in, and it made sense because everything's on an angle. But, you wouldn't believe how many times this is run into In fact, I think Ed was with me at the time, and one of our consultants was in a wheelchair, and he actually tore his shirt on this thing on the left. So again, we really try to eliminate sharp angles or those acute angles that are just going to get you one way or another. Next. This is interesting. So this is like a $150 million brand new research building in San Francisco, and on the left you can see that they have this main entry stair, but all the way around to the right in the center picture they built this long ramp, um, and so they're thinking kind of old school stairs and a ramp off to the side. When in fact the grade is so it was really it's so shallow here that they could have replaced and eliminated the stairs and just put a series of ramps as the main entry and eliminated all this other cost. And then even the call button, the call phone on the right, they put a curb in front of it so somebody in a wheelchair can't even access it. So again, they're thinking kind of, they met the requirement. They got a ramp, they've got a emergency call station, but they didn't think about actually could people use this or save money on it.
Hey, Mike. I
This is
think
a
we.
tile
Oh,
floor.
there you
Sorry, this is a tile floor, and what it's showing you is what if somebody dropped, a senior citizen, somebody in assisted living, they dropped one of their pills on the floor. Next item. Next image. So you can see the pill in the upper right. So, the flooring probably worked, it made spec, kind of looked good in the pattern, but probably the designer wasn't thinking about, what the actual users of the space need, and they need contrast. Next. So great space, beautiful, shiny, but the designers probably never envisioned all of these veiling reflections going on. And you can imagine, again, if you're new to this building, um, or you have a sensory disorder or a visual impairment, that there's some potential problems maneuvering through this entrance to the building. And so we recommend non-shiny finishes where appropriate, lighting control, and also some strong graphics directing people. Next. So what do you see the picture on the left, the soccer players? This is being viewed by somebody who has a kind of a common form of color blindness, red, green, where red and green look the same. And so, the person watching this game, other than the white shorts, really doesn't know who's on what team. But you notice how in the background, the yellows and the blues are pretty clear. And if you look at the Rubik's Cube in the upper right, there's a normal Rubik's Cube on the left, and on the right is, again, being viewed through somebody who has red, green form of color blindness. And you can see all the colors kind of become brown, except those yellows and blues. And so I show this slide because there is a science behind color and universal design. So if you're doing a project and you understand your user group, you should think about the appropriate colors to use so that they can distinguish, between different areas of the building. Next. So we are designing a center for autism, and what we got to learn was this is potentially how somebody with one of the spectrum disorders, feels and sees in a crowded train station. Everything is kind of chaotic, which is why the importance of certain colors, in spaces and buildings where we have autistic individuals, and also quiet rooms, lighting controls, and things like that. So again, This is being looked at through a different lens than you or I would normally look through. Next. So, again, what this is really saying, a little chasm or a threshold or a step, it's not a big deal to us, but it's really a big deal to a lot of other people. Next. So we've all seen this sign. So you come up to the front of the building. This is just like the one I showed in San Francisco a few slides ago. You come up to the building, there's a bunch of steps, but if I can't use the steps, I have to go around and find the other entrance. So what we're really saying here is this really doesn't work anymore. Next. And so when you look at accessibility, in 1990, the ADA was passed, and it was really, really a good thing. But universal design offers just far more potential for inclusion, and it really challenges us. Think of it that way. It really challenges us to look beyond physical abilities and disabilities, and think about really designing for everyone. Next. There are 7 principles of universal design. I won't go over every one. These are available on our website, available on, you can Google it. But everything we do, when we talk about universal design, it's really based on these 7 principles. And it's kind of the cornerstone when we create universal design strategies and promote them to companies. Again, it's based on these 7 strategies. So this is just kind of I put this in just to kind of give you a picture of, this just isn't happening in Grand Rapids, Michigan or Washington, D.C. We have worked in the last 2 years, we've worked in, 16 different countries, helping organizations, really create truly inclusive environments that are safer and accessible to everyone. It's kind of interesting how the culture of those countries definitely influences things. There are some countries that are really, really advanced. Like, for instance, Ireland is really advanced with their accessibility regulations. Japan is not. India is not. Some of the South American countries are not. So you have to always think about kind of where they're at today and where you want to move them to. And so many times when, like, for instance, the project in India we did, we didn't try to ask them to do everything, but they did about 10 items and they did them really well. And that was a huge step for them. And so just making advancements in that country on that one project, and they're really proud of it. I mean, they see it as it's a showcase for the rest of India to follow. Next. So there's a business case for really advancing inclusion when it comes to disability. And what we have found working with these global companies is that, they're touched across their entire supply chain, because, it's about people, and people are connected to their entire supply chain. And again, as I mentioned, there's 1.3 billion people who have a disability. We think it's a way to differentiate companies with their consumers and employees. It tells a really interesting story, and I'll share some of that in a moment. But it's also an opportunity for growth and an innovation platform for business. Like I mentioned, in India, they are touting this, and they are so proud of it that it's going to help them be innovators within their own country. And so that's okay. Next slide, please. So here are the 5 challenges we're coming up with when we work with some of these corporations. Just the reality that their workforce is coming from diverse backgrounds and abilities, and we help them understand that universal design really reduces those barriers, and providing a design for everyone in their workforce. Again, they come from different cultures and different upbringings, and they're imprinted differently in life. But it's really a design that's easy to understand and navigate. So wayfinding is really important in universal design. Here's the question, how many of you are actually living your values? the companies we deal with, they're doing a great job with employment and hiring practices when it comes to being inclusive and diverse, but none of them are implementing inclusive workplaces or in the built environment. And so even though their mission and values talk about being an inclusive company, what they're finding is they're behind with actually creating those, fulfilling their mission around inclusivity in their built environment. So it's about really living their values. They're competing for talent and employees, and they think that by providing a universal design in the built environment is going to be a differentiator for them, where their teams and individuals can flourish because the barriers are removed and inclusion is encouraged versus not being thought about. And I mentioned improving safety. We've proven that it minimizes hazards, minimizes slips and falls. It minimizes accidents on stairs. It minimizes accidents by running into things, protruding objects, and sharp angles on desks and in food service areas. And the last one is a renovation over build. Many companies are renovating older buildings, and there's a lot of unique challenges that comes with that. But a little different than LEED, universal design is really about picking the best practices from a variety of choices from a framework of universal design strategies. And it really depends on who the user of the space is, what they can readily expect, and then the universal design strategies help the company accomplish that. Next. This is just a quick graph that, since 2015, you can see the rate of increase for companies hiring individuals with disabilities, and it's just because there's a shallower talent pool, and these individuals are coming into the workplace, and the workplace needs to react to them and be supportive of them. Next. So there's a bunch of key strategies when it comes to universal design. I'll just kind of hit some of these, maybe give you an example or two. Again, when you think about universal design, it's about designing for a diverse user group. It's not designing for the able-bodied individual, which is typically what happens today. So this is about a diverse user group. And it's about designing for equality versus equal access. Those are two different concepts. But universal design is about equality and allowing individuals to make their own choices in the built environment. We remove physical and social barriers. The physical barriers are kind of obvious, but when we talk about social barriers, it's making sure that people who have a disability can participate at the table, in an event, in the lunchroom, in an auditorium, just like everybody else. Intuitive wayfinding, wayfinding should not be difficult for anybody. But especially if certain forms of disabilities, we want to make it very, very clear with, signage that's easy to read, thinking about the color, thinking about the contrast, thinking about shapes. So if somebody is colorblind, they can't see the color, but they can see the shape and relate to it. The other thing is a ramp versus a stair really sends a strong message. Everybody typically puts in a stair, but if you think about, and I'll show you this in a moment, if you think about what a ramp does, a ramp allows everybody to use it. It's about promoting independence. So, many of us go through life able-bodied, we hit a point where we have a disability, or, we become a caregiver. We want to allow people to maintain their independence as long as possible in life. And then visual clarity. Things should be very, very easy to understand, whether that's getting in a building, getting out of a building, or in an emergency, getting out of a building. Next. Some other key strategies. I showed that slide earlier with that gentleman walking with a cell phone. This is one of the things that one of our major clients has talked about is they're having more and more accidents with people bumping into things. This is an interesting comment. I remember when the Apple building opened up in California, the new Apple headquarters, uh, 17 people the first day ran into glass walls. And so again, glass is great, transparent, clean, but they didn't think about, I wonder if anybody, you know, has a visual impairment or is not paying attention or isn't familiar with the building. And so now they've put up, a number of visual warning devices on that glass. I mentioned egress clarity. I mentioned glass walls and doors just a moment ago about Apple. Food service access, thinking about that whole experience for somebody who is, has a disability. Restrooms are always a barrier. Everybody has to use a restroom. And so we're really, really careful about restrooms. We'll come into clients' corporate headquarters and they'll say, oh, you don't need to look at our restrooms because we know they meet ADA. And of course, I was there one time when Ed Avink was there and I said, hey, well, let's just go take a look. And of course, it didn't meet ADA in a number of cases, but they thought it did. And so even ADA is kind of the baseline, and universal design is really about enhancing those strategies going forward. And then I've talked quite a bit about safety. Next. Here's the science of color. Again, you can Google it. It's really fascinating. But in one of our buildings in the Mary Free Bed Y, these are the 4 basic colors that we used. And you can see we really didn't mix reds and blues. And we use certain values of blues and greens and yellows. But blue is about areas of increased concentration. Gray provided this mental break from the different colors. Yellow was about, hey, I can do this, lifting my spirits and stimulating hope. And green was about balance and health. Next. So this is a photo from the Mary Free Bed Y, and this is a 120,000 square foot building. There are no steps, no stairs, no thresholds in the entire building. And the ramp is the main circulation. And it's really a deceptively simple concept when you think about it. So what does it do? It allows everybody to use it. It doesn't segregate, saying, hey, you need to, I can take the stair, but you can't, so you have to take the elevator. It also provides a safer solution, and it allows people to move at their own speed. And you can see it's yellow, which ties back to the science of color and of stimulating hope and kind of, I can do this. This is actually also used for rehab patients who are recovering from brain and spinal injuries, where their therapist will actually say, this week we're going to walk this section of the ramp. Next week we're going to kind of increase it. So it's a way for them to build their strength back, and yet, on a ramp, really a circulation piece of the building. Next. Now, one of the things we did on this ramp is, you can see on the picture on the right, everywhere there's a flat area, we used a lighter color. And again, you don't have to do this. It could all have been one color. You go look at an airport, they're typically all one color. But in an airport, that's where most people have accidents. They're in a hurry with their baggage, they're on their cell phone, and they don't see the flat area coming up, so they stumble. Well, we wanted to make it visually really clear that there was something different going on in this ramp. So the dark gray are the areas of decline, and the white areas, or the lighter areas, are the flat areas. So you could see that very clearly. Next. So this is the track, of course, and again, we use some pretty high contrast so that people would stay in their lanes. Around the inner lane is the handrail. People are, with oxygen tanks, and moms or dads pushing strollers, somebody rehabbing. they're using an inside lane and they feel safe because they can more easily stay in their lane, and they realize with the other two lanes, people are going to more easily stay in their lanes if they're going faster. So again, in a lot of schools, you'll find these are going to be their school colors, but the contrast just doesn't work. And so this is almost like a road or a runway where you can very, very clearly stay in your lane, and others will respect that and stay in their lane also. Next. This is called a mat table. We have two of these in the family locker rooms. So if you're a paraplegic, you most likely get dressed or undressed. You have to lie down or lean back. And so this allows somebody to enter the room on their own, maintain their independence. I don't have to ask for help. I'll wheel up to this mat table, transfer onto it, get myself dressed or undressed, transfer back to my wheelchair, and then leave the room. And so these are the height of a wheelchair, like up at 18 inches. And it's such a big hit. We should have done 6 or 8 of them, but we just didn't realize the impact it was going to have. But they are used all the time. And in fact, there's a unintended consequence. Moms or dads will take their 3 or 4 kids in these, and they'll stand them up on here to get them dressed in their swimsuits and that, or undressed, and they leave and there's water all over it. And so somebody has to come wipe it up. But my point is that it actually helps other groups of individuals, and that's what universal design is really about. Next. So in the background is the code required lift. It's rarely used at this facility. In fact, I've never seen it used. And in the foreground is the transfer station. So somebody will, again, the height of a wheelchair, it's 18 inches, they'll wheel up to this, and they'll transfer onto it, and then they transfer all the way down into the pool, and again do their exercises, transfer back up onto their wheelchair or their walker or their crutches, and they'll leave the pool area. Now a lot of people say, why not a ramp into the pool? Well, a ramp is actually less safe, because what happens is if somebody starts to go down a ramp, first of all, they have to have use of their legs, but if they start to go down a ramp, they sometimes can't control how fast they're going. Where on this transfer station, I think there's about 8 transfer levels. They can transfer one at a time and take their time getting into the water and have control. So again, this is about control, maintaining respect, and maintaining independence for individuals. Next. Just a overall picture of the pool, some universal design strategies. You'll see the lane line ends are red. They're actually orange. They show red here, but they're actually orange. And the flags above, we showed orange. Those are because many times in pools, accidents happen when the novice swimmer doesn't realize the edge, the wall is coming up. They're flopping, backstroke or closing their eyes and swimming toward the wall. And so these are visual cues to let people know that, hey, something's coming up. It's not the blue and white middle lane lines. There's a bright color here, so beware. And the other thing we did here was we created a laminar airflow. You can see that soft duct up in the ceiling. There's like 1-inch holes at 3 inches on center, and it creates a laminar flow to remove the chloramines off the surface of the water. Chloramines are what you smell when you come into a building. You think you're smelling chlorine, but you're really smelling chloramines. And on the left-hand side here, right next to the pool deck, which you can't see, are the returns. So you have a high supply, laminar flow like an operating room, and it pulls the chloramines and all that, the bad gases off the water. So people are breathing 12 inches above the surface. They're breathing better air. They're not breathing in the chloramines. So again, just another simple universal design strategy of trying to remove chloramines from the surface of the pool. And then we did acoustics, because these are typically really, really hard reverberative environments. And so we have lapidary panels up in the precast tees, and we have Tectum wall panels to reduce the reverberation time. Next. So the equipment also has to be accessible. So this is Pat Besta. Pat and I use the same Cybex bench press. And all it is there's a little yellow handle on the right side that you pop up, and the seat pivots out of the way so Pat can use it. When Pat's done, I pivot it back up, the seat back in, and I sit on the seat, and I use the bench press. So what does it do? It means Pat with a disability and Mike without a disability can use the same equipment and, enjoy a conversation. And Pat doesn't have to feel like he has to go someplace else to work out. Next. Even in the kitchen area, a lower counter in there, again, thinking about, not only somebody with a disability, but kids, and keeping that counter height down so they can also observe the teaching kitchen. Next. So we really think UD is transformational. It's not transactional, it's transformational, and it allows everybody to really flourish in the same environment. Next. So we have an assessment process that we usually work with clients on. Big picture, we ask the client to determine a stakeholder team, and those are usually individuals who have who really want to learn more, going to implement and buy into this. We really try to understand their organizational aspirations and clearly what their mission and values are around inclusion. And we do a lot of education. We find that when we're done with an hour education, kind of like what I'm doing today, is people say, "Oh, we didn't realize that," or "I had no idea," or "Boy, that makes a lot of sense." And so education is a big part of what we do to get the stakeholders kind of wrapped around this different set of lenses they're going to be looking through. And then we have site assessment tools, and we create standards, and we make recommendations, and those recommendations are P1s or P2s, and they're really tied to economics and what the user can expect. So for instance, a P1 priority would be something that's low or no cost, but high impact to the users of that space. And P2 would be, hey, it's going to be more costly, and it probably doesn't have as much impact. So let's only consider this if it's an absolute, but we're not recommending those P2s. And so we once we identify the P1s and the owner buys into it, we implement those into the physical space. And then there's a 9-step process for the Global Universal Design Commission certification process. By the way, if you want to do something in the next few days, go look at the GUDC website. It was just revamped a couple days ago, but you'll get a better view of what they do as they're the independent certifying body. Next. This is my favorite quote of all time. This is the Bush family. Carson was born with spina bifida. He's now 12 years old. And this was really hard on the family. When they first came to the Y, Emily and Nate, this was new to them. Well, they've got this son in a wheelchair, and they want him to be a kid. And she was always going in other buildings and opening the door and making sure he got checked in and making sure he could get in the, use the restroom, and always waiting for him. But what she said to me was, Universal Design allows me to watch my son instead of help my son. She was always helping him before. Now she's always watching him. Carson will come into the Y, automatic doors greet him, scan at his level, checks in. He's down the ramp and on the basketball floor before Emily ever gets into the building. So it's just been when you think about Universal Design, it's really, really helpful for the entire family. And next. So that's it. I did pretty good, about 35, 40 minutes. So how about some questions?
Oh,
I have my hand raised.
Okay, go ahead, Holly.
All right. A couple of statements and then a question. One is as a child, I've always had really bad eyes, and I swam a lot when I was a kid, and I used to swim right into the walls and bang my head. So I'm glad you're doing everything you can to make the end walls more visible. Two, I found that not all wheelchairs are the same size.
Right.
And we've got powered wheelchairs and we've got manual wheelchairs. I found this out because my synagogue designed a ramp in our sanctuary so that a member in a wheelchair could come up and get honored. And he had a motorized wheelchair, and we found out that the corner was a little too tight.
Yep.
For him to get around it. So I don't know, maybe wheelchairs have become more standardized in size since then, but I haven't heard anything. Third, here's my question, and I was wondering, since now we have models and 3D renderings that you could fly through. Yeah, I was wondering if the designer can, fly through a design from the standpoint of various disabilities to see how things work. Like going through the entire building in a wheelchair. What works? What doesn't? Going to the building when you can't see worth a damn. Going through the building when you're deaf. And I've become increasingly hard of hearing, and now wear hearing aids. So, are you aware of any setup where you can fly through designs from the standpoints of various disabilities to see if the design works properly?
Yeah, well, I know we can do that. I know we can set the eye level height. So as an example, somebody seated in a mobility device, we can set that at a certain height. So that's one thing we can do. The other thing is we've learned quite a bit, and I didn't get into the actual strategies of universal design, but I know Ed is very familiar with them. We've done many things once we understand the user. For instance, if it's a user group that has low vision, we will always do 90-degree corridors, never 127s or anything like that, because they expect to turn right or turn left or go straight. They don't expect to kind of just drift right or drift left. The other thing is we've shown, we're increasing the width. The typical clearance going through a door is 32 inches. We're recommending 36 because those mobility devices do vary in size. And you're right, you can't just say like our consultant Andy, he has a really, really small wheelchair. He's strong, he can wheel it around quickly, but not everybody can do that. In bathroom stalls, we're doing the same thing. We're increasing those by 6 inches. So Holly, we're first of all, the software will allow us to do that. Because we can pick eye level heights. I don't know if we can really pick conditions though. Can you walk through the space with a 50% vision loss or something like that? I'm not sure about that, to be honest. But I know that the universal design standards, again, have gone in many cases because of the reality of the users has things are a little bit bigger. Things are a little bit bigger now.
All right. Any other questions from anyone? Well, Mike, thank you again for your time and very good presentation. Appreciate it. And everyone, again, I'm going to in the message or in the chat, I'm going to post again if you'd like to receive an AIA certificate for this presentation, please email Casey Gross with your AIA number, and she will send that out to you. And this presentation, it's been recorded and will be posted up on the CSA website. So look for that email to come out in the next few days.
Yeah, and if anybody has a question, don't hesitate to send me an email or text me. Happy to, if you think about something later on, you have a question about it, happy to help you.
All right. Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day, and if we don't talk to you, have a good Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Mike and Graham.
Yep.
Mike.
Bye.
Yeah.